Thanks for watching. I'm John Razimus. In this episode, I'm going to do a book review of a book I recently finished. I have to do this review before I forget any key details about the book. This is the book I read. Some people are going to say, why do you read this guy's books so often? I assure you, there's no sponsorships taking place. I just pick up whatever book looks interesting and I read it, and I want to do a review of it as soon as possible. I just finished reading this book last week, and I will have a good enough memory, hopefully, on the key details. It is entitled The Spider and the Green Butterfly, 2nd edition by E.A. Koetting. On the front has a nice spider on there. On the back has a nice butterfly. You have to admit, it's pretty nice decorative art on the cover and the back. And the artwork inside is also very well done. Like many grimoires and occult texts, this book came with a warning. The warning was, don't even read it without you wanting these entities into your life. And just to preface, this book is all about voodoo. Haitian voodoo. Voudon Voodoo. There's so many different ways to spell it and pronounce it. Trust me, I have tried 10 different ways. You can find 10 different voodoo books by typing voodoo in 10 different ways on the internet. But I call it voodoo or Voudon. And E.A. Koetting, a white person, has received some backlash, supposedly from the Haitian community, but perhaps Americans representing the Haitian community. I haven't seen any actual Haitians in Haiti talk about it, but there are people with a Haitian and African background which had some negative reactions to the existence of this book. But I guarantee you, there's a good chance they didn't even read this book. One of the main things that was impressed upon me when reading this book was how carefully, delicately, respectfully E.A. Koetting was for the Haitian religion and the African roots to that religion and the entities associated with those religions. He was very respectful throughout the entire book. In no way, shape, or form does he ever talk down to the Haitians or the Africans, or more specifically, the Loa. The Loa he greatly respects throughout the entire book A to Z. The only thing he would have been against would have been the cults in Haiti that want you to pay a lot of money before you can even get to the gates. And his style is to just bust open the gates, but he even admitted he doesn't have access to the front gates of Haitian Voudon. As a white man and as a non-Haitian, he had to go through the back door or through the side roads. He couldn't take the highway or the freeway. He had to take the side streets. And he even uses the analogy of driving from Los Angeles to New York using the side streets alone. That would take an extreme amount of time to do. I don't think it's even possible, but it's a good analogy. And he works with the Loa that allow him in through the little side areas, and they open up the gates and doors to him, maybe not through the front, but he said he enjoys working through the side streets of these currents of these streams of information, streams of knowledge, streams of power. Now, I don't necessarily agree with any of that, or all of that, or let's just say I don't have a first-hand perspective on occultism, on practicing the occult rituals, summoning entities. I don't do that. Never have. I'm an anti-occultist. So whenever I read an occult book, even ones with great warnings, watch out, the Loa will try to introduce themselves to you and attach themselves to you if you even open this book and read it. I don't take a warning like that too seriously, because I've read similar warnings in many books, and the storm already came back in 2011. And so I've already been introduced to the supernatural world back in 2011, which I've talked about at great length. I'll spare you the details of that. I did have a first edition of this book that I found and snagged for a good price, and I sold it. And it wasn't impressive graphically. The graphics, literally, were very pixelated. So I think one of the main motivations EA had to redo this book was to really give it some amazing artwork. Here is one of the veves, or vives, in Haitian Voudon, and it's done specifically for this book, as opposed to the first edition of this book, which seemed to have grabbed off Google Images and enlarged really small pixelated images and made the pixels 10 times worse. You don't see anything like that. This is a high quality book. This artwork was specifically made for this book. The art alone is very high quality, very cool to look at. I didn't get the impression any Loa or any Voudon entities were watching me while I read this book, so that's a good sign. It's a good sign. But I have to admit, I read most of this book at work. As a matter of fact, I read the entire book at work, in between working. And work is a very neutral place. A lot of bright lights, a lot of neon lights, a lot of people working there. And so that atmosphere, perhaps, is a little more protective, but no negative entities have followed me. I read the entire thing, and the very end of the book, EA adds the interview between him and a Santeria initiated occultist named Masters, and this exact same dialogue can be seen in a YouTube video. And I understand why he would bring someone from Santeria in. It's too bad he couldn't find someone from Haiti that practiced voodoo, Voudon specifically. But Santeria, hoodoo, voodoo, Palo Mayombe, these religions are very similar in, I would say, their structure. The entities seem on paper to be very similar, if not the same entities. Occultists will say they're the same entities using different masks, using different names. And I will agree with that, even though I don't have any first-hand perspective on summoning them. Now, a lot of occultists say you can't really tell, they're invisible. And that's a good point, because if you summoned 1,000 entities and they're all invisible, and you had to base what they felt like, or what images came through your head, see, some occultists, that's all they have to work with. But some rare occultists, I hear, can see full-body manifestations or can see extreme vivid images pop in their head. He goes through some ritualistic details which he claims were censored from the first version of this book. I don't know what those details are because I didn't read the first edition of this book. It would be nice to compare them and contrast side by side. But there is one detail in this book which confirms something that I already knew. But I'm very grateful that I found it. I believe it's on page 32. Let's take a look and see if I can find it. In my opinion, it's probably the reason I was so drawn to purchasing this book in the first place. I didn't know it would be in here. As I said, I never read the first edition, so I don't know if this is a new secret only in the second edition. But I'm going to try to get a copy of the first edition just so I can double check. But on page 32, E.A. Koetting says, Hogons also understand that the most cunning, wicked, and powerful evil spirits hide in the corners of the home, waiting for darkness and sleep to begin their work. Corners of the home. You see, corners of rooms is something I've been talking about for a while, but I've held information back. I learned about corners of rooms in the year 2011. I mean, I might have learned a little bit in 2010, but 2011 is when it really struck me, wow, there's a pattern. Corners of rooms is where these evil entities manifest from. Or it's the entry point they always take. It's the place they always enter your room from. The fact that E.A. Koetting added this to this book, I don't know if it's only in the second edition or if it's also mentioned in the first. I'm going to have to double check, but this is a great confirmation for me. Hogons, he describes, are the experts who practice Voudon in Haiti. They are familiar with the fact that powerful evil spirits hide in the corners of the home, waiting for darkness and sleep to begin their work. They are often seen when walking in the middle of the night, the mind still partly dreaming. Their eyes are seen first, glowing with a darkness beyond the night, and then their figures begin to materialize, hovering like a walking shadow. Sounds like shadow people. I would most definitely agree. Shadow people are negative entities. I may have seen a few shadow people, but it's such a corner of the eye situation. It's such a corner of the eye peripheral vision scenario that you don't even know if it's your imagination or if it's really happening. But I have seen out of the corner of my eye a few times here and there throughout my life shadow figures. And to be honest, most of the time they're running. They're usually running really fast, which makes it even more blurry. And I don't know if it was in my imagination or what. But back to the book. He gives specific details, but he does hold back. He doesn't want to give his exact initiatory procedures that he took. And I think he does admit it's different for everybody. The Prince is the Haitian that practices voodoo, Voudon, in Haiti, that gave EA some information. He admits he gave him such small amount of information that here, go into the middle of the desert, get some cornmeal, make a veve, and drink some rum, spill some rum, bada bing, bada boom, bada bing, yada yada yada. And that's basically one of the first pieces of information the Prince gives EA. Basically what you could find on Google search in 5 seconds. Cornmeal, veve, rum, yada yada yada. And the yada 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 is not filled in. He didn't give him anything. So EA goes into the middle of the desert, does a veve in the cornmeal, maybe has some incense. He hears drumming sounds. He says a lot of the times these Loa spirit entities, when they come, he says they're a lot more powerful than other spirits he's encountered. He says there's a lot of chanting, drumming sounds that come with their presence. Very interesting. He also said a lot of the times, if not every single time, he couldn't see them. They almost appeared at the back of his head. And every time he turned, they turned with him. And then one of the secrets in this book, I probably shouldn't reveal it, I'm not going to. Let me just vaguely reference it. The spirits, these Loa, the powerful ones, they latch on to the spine. And they almost crawl into your skull. And they come out your stomach. Some crazy, 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 crazy stuff that, you know, that You know, that little feeling on the end of your neck, like the movie The Sixth Sense, those are dead people. Now, that's obviously a very common urban legend, wise tale. It goes beyond urban legend. That's an ancient, ancient wise tale, but it can be true to a certain extent, most definitely. I sense spirits, and I can tell you, it does resemble temperature changing and your body adjusting to the new temperature. It does resemble that, but it's different. You know it when it happens to you, if you're familiar with what it is like. To a person that has not experienced spirits in or around them, they can easily mistake it for, oh, that's just the wind. When you're in a room with everything sealed, you know that's not the wind. I have experienced such, but as far as the skull and the spine and I can't say I've experienced such vivid detail, such a blunt. There's another secret in this book. I should probably keep it for the book. I don't want to give away any more secrets. If you want to learn secrets, you got to read these books yourself. This is simply a book review. I don't want to word for word give away, the core of the book. I just want to give my impressions. And I was, I held off on reading this book for a few months. I was a little bit freaked out. I was like, I don't want these Loa following me, but for research purposes, I felt I needed to read it. Great respect was given to the culture, the history, and Atlantis was mentioned. And the haters specifically latched on to that Atlantis story. But E.A. Koetting did not invent the Atlantis story mentioned in this book. It would be easy to rip him to shreds if he did invent the Atlantis story. And he may have embellished a little bit. The Atlantis story connected to Haiti, as mentioned in this book, involves Atlantis was a great and wonderful, very advanced civilization, and their science, their technology was magic. There were white magicians and black magicians, or black magic and white magic, and they lived together in harmony. And there were basically two schools of magic, kind of like Gryffindor and Slytherin in Harry Potter. And they achieved great things. With their foresight, they saw future technologies like missiles and rockets, who knows, but they saw war elements which could destroy them. The craziest part of the story is they turned themselves into fish and swam into the ocean, knowing that Atlantis was going to be destroyed. So Atlantis gets destroyed, all the wizards are fish. That's the hilarious part of the story. The fish wizards swim to Africa and establish Egypt, and they build the pyramids and all this stuff connecting the Great Giza Pyramid with Egypt and the Sphinx, which have been associated with Atlantis. Then they swim on over to Haiti, and they establish their magic, the same magic from Atlantis over in Haiti. And voodoo, Voudon, is perhaps the dark magic, perhaps the white, perhaps a mix of both of them. That story, I thought it was crazy. I thought it was absurd. I was like, what? You making this up? And then I visited the Manly P. Hall Museum. I picked up a few random books, pamphlet books, like booklets, and in one of the books that I purchased at the gift shop, it did mention the Atlantis story. And I was like, whoa, this predates even EA's birth. I believe the story was from the 40s or 50s. Manly P. Hall wrote it a long time ago, and Manly P. Hall is likely quoting it from someone else. And the story mentioned magic existing in Atlantis, them foretelling their destruction, them going on over to Africa and establishing themselves in Africa. It didn't mention the fish people, I don't believe. And it didn't mention Haiti. But voodoo, Haiti, Voudon, originates from Africa, a lot of the elements. And there are a lot of original elements that are mixed with Catholicism, mixed with other religions. He did talk about how a lot of the Catholic saints were used as masks for Loa, for different voodoo gods, and that way the Haitians could practice their secret Voudon religion, yet pretending to be Catholic. And that is most definitely happening in Haiti today. There's no doubt about it. They mix a Catholic church with voodoo, and I've seen photographs on Google Images, so it's not that secret. But what is secret are the cabals, the cults, if you will. He calls them cults in this book, that only allow certain people to join. They handpick them. You can't come and ask to join. They handpick you. And the people that are handpicked are approved by the spirits. The spirits handpick who gets to join, and they do perform the super secret rituals at night, probably in secret locations. Whereas they do perform open and public and in broad daylight for the tourists, certain rituals. And he talks about the distinction between hoodoo, the Americanized voodoo bags with stuff in it that they sell to tourists. And that those bags of hoodoo were popularized by that queen of voodoo who went on over to Haiti, kind of ripped off the religion, went on over to the United States, changed the name from Voudon to voodoo, made it very popular. And then EA talks about the blowing powders, how they're magical blowing powders that are created by these Haitian Voudon masters that can stun your victim, kill your victim, a love powder on a rose and they smell it. A lot of different interesting things that I will never practice, but it's interesting to read about them. He talks about the distinction between zombies and how actual Haitian Voudon zombies are not dead people. They're not corpses brought back to life. They are more living people put into a certain trance. One of the reasons that reading this book freaked me out before I read it was just looking on the videos on YouTube. There are a lot of videos of mutilation, crazy stuff that happens inside of the cornmeal veve. I don't know how to pronounce it. I call it a vive, to be honest. But that sigil drawn on the dirt, drawn on the ground in cornmeal, anyone within it, or anyone even close to it, gets possessed by the Loa. And there's one person that is fully possessed, and that person, when someone gets fully possessed, everyone in the circle stops and they acknowledge that a Loa is in their presence. This entity is looking out the eyes of a human, perhaps drinking some rum, smoking a cigar, perhaps getting a knife and mutilating the body of the person, that after they leave, the person wakes up and they got a bunch of cuts or maybe their ears chopped off. Crazy, crazy, crazy stuff. Now, he didn't go into great detail on that, but that's the type of stuff that does take place in Haiti with those that practice Voudon. But I'm sure there are a lot more brighter, more beautiful colored versions. It still scares the crap out of me, to be honest. I wouldn't want to ever participate in that, but it's their religion and culture, and he is very respectful throughout the entire thing. I just wouldn't want to accidentally get possessed, and who knows what happens when you wake up. That would be the freakiest thing to me. He does mention they wear white robes, similar to a Christian baptism, and they respect the different water Loa. They see these Loa as their ancestors, as their family, as their protectors. And some of the people that go into the trance, they see skeleton people. One wears a top hat, being the most popular one, and I've seen that referenced time and time again. A top hat wearing skeleton that seems like a happy guy, very much like a Tim Burton movie, but it's an actual religious belief of the Haitians concerning Voudon. But here's a really cool drawing of that top hat wearing skeleton. I don't recommend practicing any of these rituals. A lot of people say that EA looked like he had a hangover after practicing with these entities. And perhaps if you do practice with these entities, perhaps they will give you more than a hangover. Perhaps they will watch over you and do more than that, but interfere with your life. There are some Loa considered tricksters that like screwing up your life on purpose to teach you a lesson so you can actually better yourself. Or some like to trick and screw with you to destroy you and destroy your soul and destroy your life. So yeah, I mean, an invisible entity, all right? Can't see it. Can't distinguish between the good ones and the bad ones. One's super nice, teach you wisdom. One wants to destroy you and kill you and make you dead and just destroy you and kill you. You know, so those are some of the warnings that come with practicing with these entities. Whether they exist or not, I think there's a good chance they do exist. In fact, I found a similarity between a Haitian Voudon ritual and the Skull and Bones secret society at Yale. And I will talk about that in the future. But as far as this book, I used to give a rating on these books, and I no longer give ratings because, I mean, it's just my opinion. But I would say this is definitely worth keeping. For page 32 alone, it mentions corners of rooms. A super secret in the occult, more confirmation that corners of rooms is legitimate. I have not read this book until recently. I just finished reading it last week. I had no idea corners of rooms was mentioned in this book, but I did read an email maybe a year or two ago where EA does vaguely mention how the nastiest entities hide in corners of rooms. Perhaps he learned that through working with these entities or talking with people who practice with these entities. But it's definitely a secret that's actually true, bringing more confirmation to me that not only is corners of rooms a legitimate phenomenon, but him working with these entities is probably legitimate as well. You know, he said these entities, they're not racist. They'll work with anyone of any skin color, of any creed. On top of that, you don't have to be in Haiti to work with them. And that makes a lot of sense. Spirit entities, they can fly around with thought alone, manifest to materialize. They're not restricted by the boundaries that humans are restricted by. An island, a country, a border, a fence, a wall, a window. They can walk straight through any of that. But there are spirit entities assigned to specific plots of land. And there are entities assigned to you, and I think the higher ranking entities can roam. Perhaps these Loa are higher ranking entities that can roam wherever they want to go. I think the lower ranking entities, that maybe they could roam, but they're under strict rules and they want to follow the command, the chain of command. I don't know the details of how it works. It's not a comic book. It's not a cartoon. It's not a Hollywood movie. These entities exist. They're invisible to our eyeballs. We can't perceive them unless we're gifted with an extremely rare gift. Just because humans haven't evolved with the ability to see 99% of the spectrum of what's out there, it doesn't mean it's not out there. We mathematically, scientifically know we can see a fraction of the spectrum of what's out there. Dark matter, UV rays, you name it. There are millions of things we cannot see in this universe, billions, trillions. One of them happens to be a layer of a dimension on top of this dimension, where entities walk. And we're down here, they're up here. I have zero desire to communicate with them because I know these low entities that are really close next to us, they're negative. Why are they negative? Because they're on the bottom of the spiritual totem pole. We are on the bottom of the physical totem pole, but we're not on the bottom of the spiritual totem pole. But I did learn a good deal from this book. It was less scary than I thought it would be. So EA left a lot of the scary details out. And he talked about a lot of the rituals. And if you're into that, get it for that. But I do not recommend practicing it. But you're going to do what you want to do anyway. I just bought it for research purposes, informational purposes. And I learned that the Voudon masters in Haiti, they know about corners of rooms, how negative entities hang out, manifest, hide in corners of rooms. I am reading many, many more books. Just to give you an example of another book I recently read, the Necronomicon. Now, I didn't necessarily read this. What I did read was Dead Names. So I just basically finished Dead Names. And I have the deluxe edition of Dead Names signed by Simon, the guy who anonymously claims to have translated the Necronomicon from supposedly an authentic text. Until next time, this has been John Razimus with Occult Unmasked. Be seeing you.